Reverend Brown, Mrs. Brown, Dr. Butler, Reverend Phillips, Trustee Turner, Reverend Lewis, Israeli Consulate, Associate Consulate Zamir, Cantors, Addie and Luck, my boss, Rabbi Beth Singer. Temple Emanu-El likes coming to church. We are in your house and we are proud to be in your house. We are proud of 36 years of this relationship. 36 years. That's right. It's a relationship of purpose and of friendship. Now you mentioned the passage that the author of the Song of Songs, who was such a romantic writer, we're taught it's King Solomon himself, wrote some of the most romantic phrases in the Western tradition. On our anniversary, I know I'm supposed to read some of that to this other rabbi here, and I do with pleasure. Well, that author also wrote those words you heard: "Set me as a seal upon thy heart, as a seal upon thine arm, for love is strong as death, jealousy as cruel as the grave. The flashes thereof are flashes of fire, a very flame of Adonai, of the eternal, of the Lord." Well, I know I'm becoming an older man, because the other day I made a Star Trek reference to a young adult student. She was 20 years old. Are any of you Star Trek fans? The original Star Trek show, right? Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and Lieutenant Uhura. I know I'm older because sadly the young woman I was teaching didn't know anything about that transformative TV series. But we oldsters, we remember Gene Roddenberry's sci-fi hit, so influential, that space adventure in which the Starship Enterprise voyaged into deep space, going where no person had gone before. It was a journey, a united journey for the benefit of humanity. Well, the show was important beyond just the fans of science fiction. Its flight deck with the captain's chair and command center was populated in the 1960s, something no one had ever seen before, by an interracial and international collection of people acting as professionals and leaders working together in harmony. And that image was broadcast. Back then, folks, there were only 3 television channels into millions of homes in the late 60s. At the height of MLK's heroic stand against racism and the Vietnam War, as well as the apex of the Cold War. Just a few years prior, the Civil Rights Act had been signed, and children, many of us my age, were still practicing. Do you remember this? Hiding under your desk so you could be protected during a nuclear attack that could come at any time. I'd lie in bed at night wondering if that was going to happen that night. That's what it was like to live then. Well, the flight deck on the Starship Enterprise represented a vision of what we could aspire to as human beings. If only we'd let go of the worst part of ourselves. The hatred, the misogyny, the racism, the nativism, the anti-Semitism, the ultra-nationalism. You know, for a secular show, it carried a messianic message. One of hope and belief in the best of the human spirit, something that these 2 religious communities, we share so much in common. Imagine, the writers were saying, if we free ourselves from the chains of hatred, there'd be no boundaries, no limits to the good we could do. We could go where no civilization had gone before. For love is as strong as death, a very flame of the eternal. I'm a little bit like the dad at my big fat Greek wedding. As a proud Jew, Whenever I see a Jew doing a good thing, I think that's what we're about. So I'm grateful to point out to you that two of the actors who played Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, well, they were both members of the tribe.
All right.
I once, by chance, had the honor of taking Leonard Nimoy out for dinner. May his memory be for a blessing. He played Mr. Spock. He was an amazing artist and human being. And he would often share that the sign that he made for the Vulcan greeting, well, it came from his childhood experience of attending an Orthodox synagogue where the Kohanim, the priests, are called up to bless the community. Yivarechecha Adonai v'shmerecha, Adonai panav elecha v'yihuneka, Yisad Adonai panav elecha v'yisem lecha shalom. When they said, what can we do? He kind of just went like that, and he said, that's good. And as a proud former Seattleite, living in that city for 18 years, I go to the museum now and then of pop culture that Paul Allen, the co-founder of Microsoft, created. He collected these sci-fi things. So there he had the original set from that Star Trek. The captain's chair was there. And there are videos talking about important moments in the show. And two of those videos focus on the woman who played Lieutenant Uhura, Nichelle Nichols, a beautiful, so talented, intelligent, African-American actor, singer, and dancer. Ms. Nichols died this last year. God bless her memory. She related how it was on Star Trek that the first interracial kiss was broadcast on American television in a wide way. There are other smaller ones, but this one, everyone saw. It was 1968, just 1 year after the Supreme Court decision in Loving versus Virginia. Strike down state laws against interracial marriage. The writers put the kiss into the script. And at first it was Spock who was going to kiss her, but William Shatner said, no, I'm going to be the one. But after filming it, the broadcast executives became concerned about a potential backlash coming from the white viewers in the South. And they decided not to go with it. Avariciousness breeds cowardice. That's the truth. And so they demanded a reshoot that very morning, just before the episode would be aired that night. So when William Shatner went in to shoot the replacement scene, he kept purposely screwing it up. I think he did so as a good Jewish boy. So they had to go with the original scene that night. They had no choice. And that night, broadcast history was made. And Americans all over the country, including the South, began to see the possible normalization of love between races. Something that I believe the God who loves diversity always intended. That we should be free to love and respect each other. Partner with each other, not be judged. Yes. It's not God who creates the separations between us. It's not God who plants hate within us. This happens when, as the great teacher Rabbi Martin Buber taught, when humanity pushes God out of our lives, removes the holy from our midst. Yes. For jealousy is as cruel as the grave. God, we know, wants us to reflect the beautiful diversity of the divine creation. We are better when we do so together, like we do right now, Emanu-El and Third Baptist, right here, right now. Sometimes I think I'm in a bad sci-fi movie. When I think that here we are 54 years later, who would think that in 2023, Congress in this greatest country in the world would have to pass a new law to ensure that interracial marriage would remain legal in every state. blocking a threat that came from the Supreme Court after their horrific abortion finding, where they threatened that they could reverse that right. I believe taking away the right to privacy. Who could imagine in this country today we'd have to struggle to protect our right as free adults to marry whom we love? Well, these two communities, let's be honest, we could imagine it. These two communities are on the receiving end of haters whose voices are louder, who would like to recreate a 19th century America and put us back in what they think is our rightful place. We are reminded daily that we're far away from that messianic vision of human harmony. But we are not afraid, as that great choir sang. We are not afraid to keep fighting for freedom, for justice, and for seeing the holy in all humanity, even in the face of the haters. We have such greater power when we stand together to push against those who would push us backwards. Our two communities working for justice, against hate, for the best of humanity. We make a difference. The work is important. The flashes thereof are flashes of fire. Now, you may not know this, and I may be telling you too much about Star Trek. But that first interracial kiss would not have happened but for another reason. After having been on the show for just one season, and as a serious actress who felt demoralized because her lines were often cut, and she experienced bias off the set as well, Lieutenant Uhura, Nichelle Nichols, told the producer that she was done and she would not return for the next season. How God acts. The next day, Reverend Brown, she went to an NAACP convention, and she was greeted by a fan. His name was Martin Luther King Jr. And he told her, "I love your show." He told her how important it was. He told her that his family watched it faithfully. They adored her, the only black character. MLK was a Trekkie like me. Well, when she told him she was leaving the show, he replied, "You cannot and you must not. Don't you realize how important your presence is? Don't you realize how important your character is? Don't you see this is not a black role? It's not a female role. You're the first non-stereotypical role on television, male or female. You've broken ground. For the first time, the world sees us as equals, as intelligent people, as we should be seen." If Martin said that to me, I'm doing whatever he says, right? She stayed with the show. Well, today I want to hearken back to those words and think about the value of this coalition, this connection between our two houses of worship on this special anniversary. Because for we Jews, 36 is very important. It's double high, two lives. There are people who'd want us to stop this coalition, to move on, to lose faith in ourselves, and cause us to wonder if we're really making a difference. But let's hear Reverend Dr. King's words. Don't you realize how important this is? A very flame of the eternal. Jews and black Christians together, standing up for the highest of God's values, striving to love our neighbor as ourselves, to oppose those who hate, who are bigoted, who are small-minded, modeling to others how we can be together, our two communities. Yes, we know, always the targets. Did you see the security Temple Emanu-El has to have when you walk in? But we look across the street at the church, there's no security there. There's no worry there. Two communities always getting the blame. Well, they'd like to divide us, but we know united we are stronger, our hearts encouraged, our spirits renewed to do the work of the holy. Yes. The work that God has set upon us, set me as a seal upon thy heart. And this church, its pastor, its tireless leaders, its members, you matter to us. You're important to us. Your stance against hate and for a better San Francisco. Your stance in favor of hope, calling not just for the support for this particular community, though you surely deserve it, but you stand up for the rights for us and for all minority communities. If they'd like to divide us. You know, when Ye, who though I'm no doctor, I assume is mentally ill, said those disparaging things about we Jews, and when Kyrie shared that video, who called us? Who reached out right away and called Temple Emanu-El? Who called myself and Rabbi Beth Singer to give support and oppose those words of hatred and say we have to speak out against it? It was your righteous and good reverend, the Pastor Amos Brown. Rabbi, he said, we've got to stand up against this. We've got to call it out. That brave man, that incredible civic leader and friend that you have here, he knows that inclusion, support, respect are the foundations of holiness. Yes. He is a brave and courageous leader, an essential voice of this essential church. We support his work and your work to have a vibrant black community in this leading city with a safe Fillmore that promotes black culture and well-being, with reparations that make a difference. That beach city in California did it, Southern California. What's wrong with San Francisco being a leader? He knows just how important this work is that we're doing together. His fire is the flame of the eternal. And yes, I know, there are Jews too who can be racist, who can be small-minded, who can be obstructive. But those haters in both our communities are a minority. Yes, sir. But their voices are amplified because the nefarious interests who want to keep America from realizing its promise, who want to belittle our values so they can recreate a medieval feudal society, they do so they can enslave all of us. Heschel taught when he marched with King, ancient Egypt is never really far away. Rabbi Heschel, this great teacher, he said, the taskmaster awaits if we let them find their power. Well, they are strengthened when we are weakened. They are nurtured by hatred and bigotry, and they thrive on fear. They want us to break up this relationship. But they just don't understand that the bonds of love and respect and seeking God's blessing that we share, these bonds can't be broken by their feeble attempts, for holiness is stronger than enmity. It is. And love frees the human spirit. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses at the burning bush, the Reverend read that passage, taught. And that's what the modern Moses, Martin Luther King, lived. I think they both saw, as Jacob said to Esau, and I say to you, to see your face is to see the face of God. We see God's holiness and spirit in your beautiful faces, Third Baptist. We know you see it in ours. And our bonds are not just bonds of self-interest, of commonality, of the mutual experience of being on the receiving end of hate. No, they are the bonds formed by the love of holiness that these two communities, that these two faces of God engender. People need more of that faith and holiness in their lives. There's an emptiness out there, a void. And it's bonds like this that come through faith, that can fill our lives with meaning, that can do things like support back on track and lift people up. And so these words of Solomon, they resound with me, and I have to repeat them. Set me as a seal upon thine heart, as a seal upon thine arm. For love is strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. The flames, when we get back to that love, they are flashes of fire. And we see that flame in each other, and what we do together, this project of unity, this 36-year ongoing project, let none deny.
Yes.
And let us not desist from our work. For as Martin said to Lieutenant Uhura, don't you see what you're doing here is so important? It is a very flame of the Lord. Amen.
Let's give it up for Rabbi Jonathan Singer. What a relevant, profound, eloquent word we've heard today.